Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So, today we have Dr. James with us. Dr. James has practiced diversity management as an enterprise performance discipline for over 35 years. His colleagues recognize him as the leading strategist and the number one thought leader in the field of diversity management. He is also known as the diversity coach. Rogers' seminal work on diversity management have garnered global acclaim, resonating with audiences across continents. His books, including Managing Differently and Diversity Training That Generates Real Change, serve as cornerstone texts in MBA courses and organization transformation initiatives. He has a pragmatic, business centric approach, which he calls managing the mix. By marrying sound management principles with nuanced diversity initiatives, he emphasizes simplicity, pragmatism, outcome orientation, efficacy, and sustainability. His adept navigation of complex organizational landscapes underscores his unparalleled understanding of executive needs and business imperatives. Dr. Rogers serves as the director of an executive academy where he prepares tech leaders for C level enterprise leadership. He has served as a trusted advisor to over 300 senior leadership teams and as a board member for several high profile nonprofits. He is recognized by groups such as 100 Coaches, Thinkers 50, and Global Gurus as a thought leader and organizational advisor. So, thank you, Dr. James, for being here. And like I had shared earlier, I was quite impressed by the session that I had with you earlier. And that is the reason I wanted more people to know about the management principles that you teaches. And here, over to you. Thank you very much for accepting our invite, and over to you.
Prarandeep, I am delighted to be here and thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Here's how we're going to work today. I'm going to share my screen in a minute and go through a couple of thoughts. In the midst of some of those slides that I will be sharing with you, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to ask you to put your answers in the chat. And Verandeep has agreed that she would monitor that for me so that we can get some answers. But what I'm going to try to get through my presentation as quickly as possible so we leave a lot of room for questions and answers. I have found over my years that that is the most useful. I can tell you, I could talk about this all day, and I may or may not be talking about the things that you're interested in. So I much prefer to get to the Q&A. So we do something I call facilitated learning. My intent is that you learn something today that really can help you in your journey and can help your enterprise to perform even better. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through a few. Uh, Here we go. Let me put this on. Okay. So I've entitled this conversation "The Productivity and Performance Puzzle," and I think you'll see later on why I call it that. And I subtitled it "Where Did We Go Wrong?" Over the last 50 years, there's been a lot of leaning towards one thing versus another. I have been involved in corporate enterprise for many, many years, and I have seen the changes, and I have seen us do it well, and I've seen us not do it so well. So I begin my presentations by first identifying what are we talking about? So what's the issue? Okay. The issue is there's an emerging problem. I have right here next to me a report from the Gallup organization that says it's the 2025 workplace issue document that they produce every year. And it says that we are experiencing a decline in productivity and engagement. A decline in productivity would be the first time we've had an actual decline in productivity in the last 50 years. And this in the light of the fact that we have great leadership, we have breakthrough technology, and we have more information at our fingertips than any of us can consume in a lifetime. So great leadership, great technology, and massive information have not translated into better productivity. That is the problem that we're trying to address here. So to give you some sense, when I face big problems like this, I have a standard approach. That first part of that approach is let's define our terms. We can have a long conversation using the same language and not be talking about the same thing unless we stop and define our terms. Socrates said something about that that I'll show you in just a minute. The second piece is we have to make it simple. We don't want to make it so esoteric that only the smart people like ourselves will understand it. It's got to be simple so that the person on the front line in your enterprise can understand it just as well as you. And the final piece of my three-part series is don't be stupid. And Nietzsche has a phrase that I'll share with you in just a minute. The whole idea of keeping it simple, excess complexity retards growth. When you have people talking about things in more complex language, primarily they do it to make sure that they are really needed in the organization. They don't do it for the health of the organization, they do it for their own personal reasons. But it does retard growth. So let's start with some definitions. These are the ones that we're going to be talking about the most today. I'm going to share some others with you in just a minute. And I want you to think about this. And as part of your Q&A, if you disagree with any of these, please raise the issue then. I am talking about management, people management. That is the one-on-one, face-to-face, day-to-day process of making sure every employee has what they need to do their best work. All of us have had managers in the past, and we're going to look at what those managers did that allowed us to do our best work, because that is what management is all about, making the pathway for you to do your best work. We are really consumed with the idea of leadership. And after years and years of studying and looking at all 30,000 books that have been written on leadership, most of which, by the way, tell you about a single leadership event, never tell you what leadership is. But I have synthesized all of that and said that really leadership is about selling an idea, a concept, or a vision, and selling it in such a way that people willingly follow. The idea there, if people are not willingly following you and you're leading something, or you think you're leading something, you're really just having a stroll. Because if you don't look behind you and see people are really following you and saying, yes, I want to go where you're trying to take us, then that's not leadership. Now, by the way, leadership can promote good ideas and they can promote bad ideas. It's still leadership, selling any idea, good or bad, and having people to follow you. That is the definition of leadership. So here's where we begin. Socrates says the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. What he was talking about there, in any time that you have dialogue between human beings, the first thing you want to do is define your terms so that the dialogue will bear fruit. Otherwise, you're just throwing words at each other. But if you really want to make progress, promote understanding, you need to define your terms. So in my main line of work of diversity management, I always begin with these three simple definitions. Number one, diversity is a collective mix. It is not one cohort. It is not minorities, females, and gay people. It is the collective mix. Inclusion is a sense of belonging. However you do that, and this primarily is the manager's job to create a sense of belonging. Diversity management, which is my unique take on the diversity movement, is a skill and a discipline. It is not a political and social issue. It is a business issue that requires skill and discipline in order to take full advantage of what you have in the workplace. So let's go back through this. Socrates said, define your terms. Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, that means you don't understand it well enough. So I want to make sure that people understand when we talk about simple, we don't mean simplistic. We mean making it simple. That means that you have studied and practiced, studied and practiced, studied and practiced so much that you understand the issue so that you can explain it to a 6-year-old. That's what Einstein says, and that's what I believe. And finally, don't be stupid. Nietzsche said the most fundamental form of human stupidity is forgetting what we were trying to do in the first place. Hold on to this thought, because remember, we have been studying and practicing enterprise performance, productivity gains, engagement for over 100 years. So we got to remember, what were we trying to do in the first place? And I believe what we were trying to do in the first place is to create an environment in the workplace where we get world-class results, regardless of who happens to show up in the workplace. No matter what the mix happens to be, we're trying to get the best outcomes we can from the individuals and from the teams of people working in our enterprises. If we forget that, we'll go down a path that really won't lead us to anything good. So, with those ideas in mind, here's your first question, and I want you to respond to this in the chat. In this picture, where is the diversity? Help me to define where the diversity is. Look amongst all these faces and identify who you think are the diverse people. Where is the diversity? Deep, are we getting any answers?
Yeah.
I can't see the chat, so could you read them out to me?
Yeah, yeah,
Give me
yeah.
some examples.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just read it out. Says everyone, all people from different countries and continents, everyone is diverse. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody having any other thoughts? All. Okay. So there are no right and wrong answers. Just put across what you think is the case. Maybe
Okay.
there
I
are
looked at
face
the chat.
type. Yeah, maybe there are face type, color, or their style. Different age group, different
Yeah.
ethnicity, different gender.
Okay.
Mm.
So let me crack the code for you. Where is the diversity in this picture and on every team you will ever encounter? It is the whole team. It is the collective mix. Remember, we defined diversity is the collective mix. So, whatever archetype of persons happen to be on your team, that is the diversity that you're working with. Diversity is not about any individual cohort, it's not about skin color or gender or sexual orientation. It is about human beings working together. And we put together a collection of human beings. We call that the mix. And the challenge of diversity management has always been and will always be, how do you manage the mix, whatever that mix happens to be? So if you learn nothing else today, remember this. Don't let people convince you that diversity is a political, social, divisive issue. It is about making sure that whatever shows up on your team, you have the management skills to get the best out of that team, no matter what the mix happens to be. So that's the first thing that I wanted to land with you and make sure that we're clear about that. Thank you for participating. But now here's the bigger problem. An epidemic is looming. I happen to be around. I happen to start what we call a corporate university back in the uh, late 80s, and so I started studying the history of management science and the history of leadership during that time. And it turns out that before the 1970s, we had spent a lot of time perfecting the discipline of management. That is, that one on one, face to face, day to day process of taking care of people, encouraging, supporting, and developing people so that they produce the best of work that they could do. We were very good at managing. But someone made the observation, right now we're overmanaged and underled. Now, most of us didn't know what that meant, so we started looking into leadership. We started looking into leadership and we fell in love with the word leadership. And so, right now, since the mid 1970s, we are now over indexed on leadership. So, as most human enterprises do, when we have an imbalance and the pendulum is too far on one side, when we change to focus on the other side, we don't seek balance. We let the pendulum swing all the way to the other side. So, what happened was, as we over indexed on leadership, we positioned it in such a way that no one wants to be a manager now. It's like being a manager is a dirty word, and we're going to pay, and we paid a price for that. So now, in most organizations, we are overled and undermanaged. That is the epidemic that we're dealing with. Make notes, and if you challenge me on any of these issues, I invite your thoughts on what your thoughts are on this. So, there's a penalty to pay for undermanagement. As a result of undermanagement, and this goes back to the research that I was referring to earlier, as a result of undermanagement, not having that person, a good person, a great manager in the workplace to encourage, support, and develop employees are experiencing a lot of the following. There's something we call quiet quitting. That means, sometimes when you quit and leave. Quiet quitting means you quit and stay. That means you're no longer engaged in the outcomes of the business. You're just taking up space. Lower productivity is rampant. Low engagement. Engagement scores have been going up for the last 20 years. And then, of course, when COVID hit, we had a dip and they started going back up. And this last year, because of undermanagement, we had another dip in engagement. People no longer experience dignity at work, a reduced sense of well being, failure to manage the mix, as I described earlier. Anxiety and depression is rampant in the workplace, turnover, talent drain, unhappy and stuck employees, and employee malaise. These are all symptoms of undermanagement. Now, unfortunately, most organizations attack each one of these and they have special programs trying to increase engagement there's a one simple answer for increasing engagement. They come up with new programs to try to increase productivity. There's one way and one way only to increase your productivity. They come up with new programs called well-being. It's a fancy sounding word, but there's only way to increase well-being in the workplace. And that way, of course, is is through better management. So here's your second opportunity to participate with me. I have a signature question that I ask when I'm presenting to most audiences. I'm going to ask it of you. I want you to think back to a time when you were doing your best work, when you were operating at 100%, when you were killing it at work, enjoying the work that you did, getting recognized, and really feeling like you were contributing to the organization. Think back to that time when you were at your best and giving 100% at work. Now, the question I want you to answer: what did your manager do that made it possible for you to do your best work? And I want you to respond in the chat. I don't want your long-term dissertation. I just want bullet point answers. What did they do that made it possible for you to really show off at work and do your best work? And I want to collect some answers on that.
So, Dr. James, can we put that question slide? So we are at the consequence of undermanagement slide.
You want me to repeat the question?
No, if you have a slide with the question, maybe we can show that slide.
No, I don't. I didn't
Okay.
put that slide in.
Sure,
But
Okay.
it just says when you were at your best,
Mhm.
think about the manager you were working for. What did they do that allowed you to be at your best? Please respond in the chat.
So team, please tell like when you were okay. So Yogesh says empowered me to allow me take decisions. And Karan
Right.
says delegation of authority and trust in accounting. And Subhash says let
Mhm.
me do my work. Mario says they provided a space for dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
So Sandeep says appreciation, recognition of my work.
Great. So those are great answers, and those are the kind of answers that I often get. I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of audiences as I speak at MBA schools and at corporate events. I do this same exercise. I've done this hundreds of times. And in every case, people have a remembrance of that time when they were at their best and what their manager was like. The answers you gave are right on target. The point I want to make is that we each, at some time, at least once, have experienced great managers. We know what it feels like to be an employee with a great manager who's encouraging, supporting, developing you, and doing all the things that you all just talked about. Our own experience and recent research shows us that management really still matters. So while we're over indexed on leadership, we cannot forget that management still matters. So let me show you what the research has shown over 25 years of doing this exercise. And you'll see some of the familiar things that you guys just put in the chat. My great manager trusted me and gave me clear instructions and clear responsibilities. They made it clear that they had high expectations of me. They knew I could do it, and they made it clear that they knew I could do it. They offered opportunities to learn. They assigned me work that mattered, not some Mickey Mouse work, but some work that mattered. Paid attention to me, got out of my way. One of you said that they got out of my way. They valued my opinion. They included me. They nurtured my growth and let me know how I was doing. Those are the things that great managers do that really brings out the best in employees. The point that I want to make is we all know what it looks like. So unfortunately, there's a second question to this exercise, and it has an unfortunate answer. Most of the people that I present to have been in the workplace for a while, like most of you have. We've had many, many managers. We've had people that we've reported to. No matter what level you were in the organization, you still have a manager. If you're executive vice president of a major corporation, you still have a manager. He's called the CEO. The CEO is still a manager, someone who is there to support you and develop you to make sure that you do your best work. I ask people in this second question, how often have you had that experience where you were allowed to do your best work? Here's the unfortunate answer. The majority of people say once. Only once in my entire career. I had one gentleman in a MBA program said, I've been working for 28 years. I've had 14 different supervisors, and only one of them allowed me to do my best work, where I came to work excited and feeling supported every day. So my unscientific research shows it's about 1.2 times, because occasionally we'll have people who've had it twice, and one gentleman I just spoke to recently says, I've had three times that's worked. He's very fortunate because most of us only have that experience once. So let's put that in perspective. There are three major roles, and no matter how complex people like to make it, there are three major roles for any enterprise to be successful. First of all, once we establish who we are, what we do, our mission, vision, values, and strategy, we have people on the front line who are actually doing the work. These are what most consultants call the value creators. These are the people who actually create value. In other words, if you sell widgets, these are the folks who make widgets. If you sell advice, these are the people who go to the clients and give advice. If you sell financial services, these are the ones who are executing on whatever that is. These are the people who add value to the mission of the enterprise. And then, of course, there's the leaders. We are over-indexed on leaders, so we are looking up to the leaders. And by the way, doer, leader, and manager, these are not roles or titles or positions or individuals. These are functions. These are roles that people play at any given time. So at any given time, you can be a leader, you can be a doer, and you can be a manager within the course of a single day. But the role of the doer is to add value. The role of the leader is to set the direction of the organization. to think about what's down the road and around the corner that we need to be concerned about so that we remain a going enterprise. The piece that we have forgotten about is the manager who encourages, supports, and develops the people who are adding value to the organization. This is the manager who has to navigate the space between the doer and the leader. The leader stands up and gives all these lofty pronouncements about where we're going, and the doers have to execute on that. The manager has to translate that vision so that the doers know what they're working on. So it's really important that we have a simple definition of how the enterprise works. It works with people who are doing, some who are leading, but a number of them are managing. So here's the unfortunate thing. Better management is the platform we're introducing. According to Gallup, 70% of the team's outcomes is tied to the manager. Now, I will tell you from my own experience, I believe it's higher than that. But I believe I have seen teams really, really perform well, and I could always tie it back to how well the manager was getting the best out of each employee and then out of each segment of that team. That's what allowed them to really perform well. With that high amount tied to the manager, it is unfortunate that nearly 80% of all people in the role of manager are not effective in the role. And one of the reasons is we have failed to train them to what a manager is. We take a good coder, a good systems analyst, and say, you're really good at it. So now I'm going to put you in charge of all the other systems analysts. We never tell them that being a manager of coders is different than being a coder, that being a manager of system analysts is different from being a systems analyst. And so we just throw them in into that role and expect that they will figure out how to do that job well. Many of them do not. So here's the price we paid for that. Over the last 20 years or so, poor management has resulted in a $9.6 trillion productivity deficit. In other words, we have basically done the research that says if we got better managers on the front line to make sure that every employee had what they needed and were excited about coming to work and felt supported and were encouraged and was given the development that they need by their managers, we could increase productivity worldwide by $9.6 trillion. Now, that's a problem worth working on. Wouldn't you agree? One of my old friends, Marcus Buckingham, says if people are not happier and more productive working for you than not, then you should get out of managing. You're in the way. What that reminds us is that managers have two possible outcomes. They can propel or accelerate your performance, or they can be a drag on your performance. There's usually no in between. So if you're not seeing people more productive working for you, you probably need to raise your hand and say, "Hey, I need some training. I need some ways to figure out how to be better at this." Or, as one person did recently, and I supported them, I'm not cut out to be a manager. I shouldn't be managing people. I'm a individual contributor, and I do that very well, and that's what I really want to do. But anyway, don't be in the way. So, we talked about the mix. Team is made up of individuals, different archetypes of human beings. They're all trying to produce outcomes. So we defined diversity before as a collective mix. We've come up with a product called managing that mix. That managing that mix is just a management discipline. For those of you who know the history of management science, you will know for many, many years we had people like Maslow and McClellan and just a bunch of scholars working on how to improve human productivity through better management. And we got really good at it. And in fact, one time, Peter Drucker, who is considered the father of modern management, finally declared, after working on this for years and years, he's finally declared, management is now a discipline. And by discipline, he means it's no longer just an area of study, it is a discipline. That means we know how to do it, we know what the principles are, and we know how to get the predictable outcomes. When something becomes a discipline, that means everybody should be doing it pretty much the same way. We have a process called Managing by the Numbers, a simple learning tool that allows us to produce managers that can do that, can establish that discipline and get the predictable outcomes that every team wants to get. MBTN, Managing by the Numbers, is basically 5 components. There are 3 beliefs, 4 phases, 7 principles, 12 elements, and these 12 elements, by the way, almost match one for one the components of great managers that we just talked about, that you guys confirmed by your own experience. These 12 elements basically match those. And then 28 questions that a great manager needs to ask himself to make sure that they're on target to serve the people that they support well. Our promise in this process is that if you do this, you will be a better manager, period. If you do this, you will be a better manager, period. Now, I'm going to just give you a sample of the 5 elements of it. The first one is 3 beliefs. In order for you to be a better manager, you need to attend to 3 beliefs. Every employee needs to believe something in order to be motivated to perform. This is called motivation to perform. What would cause a person to want to get up every morning and do the work and give their all, give 100% to the task that they've been assigned? The first belief has to do with I can do it, confidence. Believe it or not, this is one of the hardest to identify and the easiest to remedy. So if you're a manager and you find someone is not performing and you can't figure out why they're not performing, because when you hire them, you know they have the potential to perform. They're smart enough, they're skilled enough, but for some reason, they're not performing. It's very unlikely, unless you have a good relationship with that person, it's very unlikely you're going to get them to say, hey, boss, I just don't know how to do this. But 90% of the times when they don't know how to do it, it's an easy fix. If you can get an employee to really come to the conclusion, you assigned me this, I accepted the assignment, but I'm finding out I don't know how to do this. The one thing you can do as a supervisor, as a manager, is say, okay, great, I can help you. Bob knows how to do it. I'm gonna let you work with him for a week and you'll figure it out. Or, I used to be really good at this myself. Let me work with you. We can figure out. Or there's a training course starting next week that the company is sponsoring. Why don't you go to that? That'll give you some clues about what you do. Or there's an association that I want you to join. There's an easy fix to this one, and unfortunately, it's difficult to identify. So the first belief is confidence. I believe I can do it, so I'm motivated to do it. The second belief is I will be rewarded for doing it. I have to believe that I will be rewarded for doing it and not for some other thing other than performing. See, here's the thing, when we get into organizations, people start rewarding folks for things that are not related to performance. That is not motivating. That does not create motivation for performance. So if it's I'm rewarded for nepotism, I'm rewarded for favoritism, I'm rewarded because everybody gets the same thing, I'm rewarded because the company overall had a good performance, not related to my performance, but the company had overall good performance, and all of us got a bonus. Those things are not motivation for performance. So I have to believe that I'm being rewarded for so I can have a direct line of cause. I did this, and I got this reward. Now, why is that important? Because as you see at the top, this belief system is the only true performance management system on the market. Everybody talks about performance management when in fact they're actually talking about performance evaluation, performance assessment after the fact. Here's what you did, and here's what you did well, and here's what you didn't do so well. This is a true performance management system because in each one of these, the manager has the capacity to affect this belief. You can work with employees so that they get to the point where I believe I can do it. You can make sure that you're in touch with that employee so you know that, hey, Bob, you did this and I'm rewarding you with this. And the final belief, of course, is I will like what you want, what you reward me with. Sometimes we give bonuses and trips to Malibu or trips to the Caribbean or whatever, assuming that everybody wants that. It really makes sense to find out what the employee wants and so that you give them satisfaction. All of these things are within the control and the purview of the manager. So the manager can actually control an employee's performance by managing these three beliefs. Now, this stuff is developed by an old colleague of mine, Dr. Thad Green, but it's based on the expectancy theory of Victor Room. It's been around for a long time, but it's been packaged this way because, again, as a performance management tool, it really works. And so the other piece I wanted to share with you is the 7 principles of managing the mix. And there you'll recognize these. If you're going to be an effective manager of people, a people manager, first of all, you first of all, remember in the 3 beliefs, they have to believe they can do it. But believe it or not, based on research, you, the manager, have to believe they can do it. So the first item on this is you have to believe they can do it. Now, there's a lot of research that shows you, for instance, any school teacher who believes that their students can perform, the research has shown that the students will perform to the level that the teacher expects. If the teacher believes they can't perform, they will perform down to that level. So same thing is true of managers in workplace. The other piece you have to do is you have to spend time to get to know each employee. Every employee is different. That's why we call our process managing differently, because each individual has their own needs and expectations in the workplace. You, as the manager, have to attend to that. Now, while you're attending to these human beings and their idiosyncrasies, you have to remember that you too are a human being and you have to manage yourself. You have to be sure that you understand what your strengths, your weaknesses, what your hot spots, and what your triggers are, so that those things don't get in the way of you managing each individual in the way that they need to be managed. And to adapt your style. You can't manage everybody the same. And to use your power. A lot of times people say, people may ask for something that I can't deliver. It's not likely they will. Just make sure that when they do ask, you use what power you have to deliver to them the things that they need. Being a good manager also means asking more than telling. And by the way, that's one of the primary tools of leadership that we teach. In my executive academy, I teach them the power of asking great questions. So, as a great manager, you also need the power of asking great questions and asking rather than telling. Because most of the people you're dealing with are grown human beings and they have their own aspirations, their own opinions, their own value system. And you have to know that. They know what they want. And if you want to know, you have to ask. And finally, to be fair. And being fair does not mean treating everybody the same. It means treating everybody the way they need to be treated in order to do their best work. So those are 2 examples of how these principles work out. There's a process, a training program that goes with this, that goes through all of those. And in 4 modules, the guarantee on it is if you do this, you will be a better manager, period. So we're promoting that and hoping that people will latch on to this. I'm hoping that I'm generating some questions on your part, but I'm going to leave this up for a minute and I'll put it back up just before we part. But I'm going to unshare right now and see if we can entertain some questions.
Yeah. So team, if you have any questions, you can put it in chat or you can raise your hand. I can unmute you. Any thoughts, any comments that you wish to share? Okay. That they are typing or thinking. Yeah. So, James, while other people are asking, so what do you think where managers, like out of the three beliefs that you mentioned, the confidence, trust, and the satisfaction, where do you think most of the managers fail to give that belief to their teams? Like having worked with all the managers and all the teams, what do you think is the most part where they fizzle out or they fail?
It's always B1 because, as I mentioned, that is the hardest to recognize. You
Mm-hmm.
will know people if you first of all, if you go back to the seven principles, I talk about managers need to get to know each employee. He needs a deep relationship with every employee.
Mm-hmm.
That is so that that employee will trust him,
Mm-hmm.
that they have the kind of relationship that that employee says, I know I can go to my manager
Mm-hmm.
with this and
Mm-hmm.
he will keep it in confidence. He'll give me the advice that I needed. So that trust has to be there. So B1 is always the toughest. It's the toughest because employees very seldom believe that their manager is going to respond well when I say, I don't know how to do this. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it.
Yeah.
So many bad managers, 80% of managers would respond badly to that. Well, why did I hire you? They would go ballistic.
Mm-hmm.
But a good manager would say, great, I'm glad you told me that. Now let's see if we can work on that. So
Mm-hmm.
once you identify a B1 problem,
Mm-hmm.
it is easy to remedy. It's usually a quick fix. I'll
Mm-hmm.
let you work with somebody else who's already doing it well. I
Mm-hmm.
will show you myself because I used to do it. There's a training program available to you. Here's a book that I want you to read. There's
Mm-hmm.
a way for me to fix a B1 problem.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, once I hired them, I knew that they had the potential to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they're not performing now, and usually, a really good manager who's experienced in using this performance management tool, they can identify it and they will call it out. Say, Bob, are you okay? Are you sure you know how to do what I've asked you to do? And that opens the door for that employee to say, yeah, really, I don't think I do. And then you get to fix it. But the
Mm-hmm.
B1 problem is always the toughest for any line manager.
Yeah, right. So we have around four questions. Before I move to those questions, don't you think that in specifically in Asia, I'm not sure about US, Europe, and other parts of the world. Here, even through the childhood, no is or not knowing is not taken as an answer. That means parents, teachers expect everyone to stand first in the class. Do you think that culturally that is a problem which has actually led to this management problem?
I agree. It is. And having a lot of Asian friends, I know how prevalent that is. But
Mm,
guess what? It's also prevalent here in the States.
mm,
We are taught to be number one in the class. We're taught to be the best. We're taught
mm,
to know the answer. If you
mm,
don't know the answer, just pipe down. And
mm.
so we create a culture where it is not safe for people to
Yeah,
say, I don't know.
yeah.
Now, let me give you a classic example of this. A friend of mine, Alan Mullally, used to be the CEO of Ford Motor Company.
Mm,
And when he got to Ford Motor Company, they used to do this red, yellow, green exercise that most of you all are familiar with that says, in my area, we've got a red that means we are really struggling with this. A yellow is we're okay, and a green means we're nailing it. So when he come to staff meetings, he'd look and he'd see a sea of green and just a sprinkling of yellow. And yet they were losing $2 billion a month in losses. So he says, how can everybody be totally in the green and yet we're losing this much money?
yeah.
He says, you guys need to go back and think about telling the truth. And so the guy who succeeded him was the first to do it. The next time they had a meeting, he got up and presented, and he presented a couple of greens, he had two yellows, and then he had two areas of his responsibility that he says, guys, I'm struggling with this. I don't know what's going on, but we are failing in
mm,
this area. And you know what Alan did? He gave him applause.
yeah,
He says, thank you for telling the truth.
mm,
And then the next thing he did, which goes to my B1 problem, the next thing he did is says, anyone else in the room have any ideas for how Frank can get through the problems he's working with? Everybody's hand went up.
mm,
So once you expose that you don't know, everybody has a solution. There's a solutions already there.
yeah,
You haven't it figured out, but everybody else has ideas about how you could move the needle on that. So
mhm,
I'm just convinced that honesty and getting beyond this cultural barrier of not being able to say I can't do it
mhm,
is one of the biggest challenges that we have in
yeah.
managing enterprises.
Yeah, yeah, very well said. So I'll read out the questions in the order they were presented. So first question is from Mario. He says that in your opinion, what's the cause of lower leadership we are experiencing today?
Well, okay, so let me put this in perspective. We have some great leaders, and we have some people who call themselves leaders who are not leaders. Remember my definition. If you are leading, people should be following. And you should, if whenever I encounter someone who calls themselves a leader, I say, okay, what idea, concept of, or a vision do you have that others don't have? And where did you get it from? And how are you trying to sell it? Usually, people in a high level executive job will call themselves a leader. And I remember one of the big, big speakers in the States, her name is Brene Brown, and she has been asked to work with hundreds and hundreds of major corporations. And she says, I've walked into rooms of senior executives and I have yet to see a leader. So being an executive does not make you a leader. A leader is someone who understands what leadership is and then exercises leadership. So the problem we have with leadership is that we have fallen in love with the word, and so we've assigned the word leadership to people who are actually direct doers or sometimes moderate managers, but they're not leading because they don't know anything that anyone else doesn't know. So Mario, I would say more than anything, let's define our terms. Let's lead when leadership is needed. Let's manage when management is needed. And let's do when doing is needed. And when we don't do that, we come up with assigning the word leadership to people who are not leading and then wondering why they're not very good at it. My premise on this is if you don't understand the difference between leadership and management, you will never excel at either one of them.
Mhm, yeah, great. So I think the follow-up question from Mario is, shouldn't being a leader be a requirement to being an executive?
The answer to that is no. Executive and leader are two different functions. You may be promoted to CIO, for instance, in this organization, and you may have been promoted to that based on your excellence in information technology. And they just need someone who really understands that to be a part of the executive team. But to call yourself a leader is that's an extension. What are you leading? See, here's the thing: in a knowledge-based workplace, uh, Barandeep, I would suggest to you that most of your members, uh, when they look at the people that report to them, you don't know as much as those people. They know their job better than you do, or at least I hope they do, because they're the ones that are doing it. So it's very difficult for you to hold over them that, you can only do this because of my leadership. No, they don't need your leadership. They need you to take care of them. They need you to manage them. They need you to encourage, support, and develop them so that they will be able to do what they've trained themselves to do, to come to work and do their best work. So that is the fallacy that we're working with. And we're trying to get people out of this idea that just calling someone a leader doesn't make them a leader
Mhm.
once we're clear about the definition.
Right. Thank you. Mario, I hope your question is answered. Right. I will move on to the next question, which is from Uday. Okay. Mario says yes. He's so satisfied with your answer. Then the next question is from Udaya. She asks that manager may not be able to reward the performers equally. How can we manage such a situation?
If you remember the principles that we talked about, we're not looking for anything equally. We're not looking to reward people equally. We're interested in rewarding them fairly. Fairly means that I give you what you need and I give the next person what they need. So in order to do that, I need to know each employee and I have to ask them honestly, when you do a great job, I'm going to want to reward you in some way. What would you like to see happen? And I'll give you a classic example. In our sales organizations, quite often people who meet their sales quota, they get these fancy trips, a cruise here, $10,000 or something like that. Well, not everybody wants that. One guy stepped up and said, I've got 5 children at home. If you want to reward me, give me some time off. Give me some time off to go and be with my family. That to me is worth $10,000. So, in order to do that job of rewarding people fairly, you have to go back to the first principle, which is get to know them. And people will be motivated to perform when they know that I'm going to be rewarded for my performance. And the reward that I get is going to be actually something that I want and need, not something that everybody gets, but what I want and what I need. That is the challenge of great management is understanding those simple principles, easy to do, but also easy not to do.
Mhm. Right. Udaya, I hope your question is answered. Okay. While she responds, we move on to the next question. We have question from Kostav. Kostav, I exactly did not get your question, but his question is how decision-making part comes into managers.
Say that again.
Yeah, how decision-making part comes into managers. I am not sure that I've got the question right, but he has typed in. Kostav, if you are here, can you raise hand? I can unmute you. Maybe you can ask the question. Otherwise, I am afraid that we have got the question, what you wanted to ask. Okay. Okay, I think I will move on to the next question while Kostav responds, and Udaya finds your response very enlightening that you have given for her question. So thank you for that. Now the next question is from Karan. He says leadership is a trait which all leaders don't have. How do such leaders be confronted, informed, and guided?
Okay, so now we're talking about power. People in organizations have power, either personal power by virtue of how they show up in the workplace, or position power by their executive level position. Uh, how do you confront people about poor leadership? You don't. I would not recommend that you go to your CEO and says, "Hey, dude, you're a bad leader." That would probably be career suicide. But as you grow up, the idea is for you to become a brilliant leader and to know that when I'm leading, it's because there is a leadership void. Somebody needs to step forward and say, hey, gang, this is where we're going, and this is what we can expect, and this is why it's going to be good for us. Won't y'all come follow me? Leadership is not about a position. The lowest level person in the organization at any point in time can be a leader if they know how to get individuals out of a mess that they're in. IBM did studies years and years ago around multiplayer games, and they said they were fascinated by the fact that some of the most insignificant players, when the team ran into a big problem, some of them would just raise their hand and say, "Hey, I've got an idea how we can get out of this." And if they were able to explain it and sell it to the rest of the team followed them. They now became the leader of that team for just that one instance. See, leadership is not a perpetual thing. It's not like you get to be a leader and every day you show up, you're a leader. Leadership is a process. It is selling the idea and getting people to follow you. And even CEOs lead most of the time, but many times and many of their days, they are just managing people and managing the enterprise. So the fact that we have to have a long conversation about these definitions is a problem. But leadership is not a position, it's not an individual. It is a process of selling.
So thanks, James. Karan, I believe your question is answered. You can let me know in chat. Karan is happy with your answer. Kishore, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
if you like, you can turn on your video as well. I think that should be possible.
I think I have some internet issues, so
Yeah, sure. Please go
bandwidth
ahead.
issues, so I can.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
Am I audible, Varun?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Good evening, James. My
Good
experience
evening,
has been,
Kishore.
yeah,
Kishore.
this webinar has been enlightening, and then thank you so much for your time. And then my question is about the manager. Uh, we say that, manages people, but that is not the case, I would say, because of my experience. What I say is people can manage themselves. What manager can do mostly is coaching and mentoring. Is that true?
Yeah, Kishore, I think James got dropped off. Yeah, he's back. Yeah.
You would like to repeat that?
Yeah, I think you will have to repeat the question.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, James, are you there? Hello, James.
Yeah, I apologize. I had a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
technical
Okay.
issue on this.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Repeat the question, please.
Yeah. So my experience has been like, in my career. So basically, manager needs to manage people. This is the basic understanding overall. And but what I think is people need not be managed. They can manage themselves. But what manager could do is basically mentor and then coaching and mentoring. Is that
Okay.
But
So,
what all along we have been, looking into this is managing people. There is no concept of managing people. People can manage themselves.
okay. So, I've been running executive roundtables around this topic for a while, and your question speaks to some classic feedback that I get. And after I explain, there are some fundamentals here. We only know what we've been taught to know. One of the things that I tell people, and I don't say that I'm naturally right. This is what I told you early on. Look at my definitions. If you don't agree, push back. And I appreciate you pushing back. The fact is, uh, we do need to manage people. The exercise that I just took you through, in order to get the best out of people, to get the best out of you, there needed to be a person we call a manager. Now, you may call them something else, but we call them a manager in the simple designation of a business enterprise: leaders, doers, and managers. We call them managers. In fact, when we were making the shift between management and leadership, somebody said something stupid that stuck. They said, you lead people and you manage things. You see how that could lead us down the wrong path. That means that if we think that all you do is manage things and you lead people, that everything that has to do with your working with people, we define as leadership. But if we look at it, if we think about it and look at it, we know that that's not true. But if we don't think about it and look at it, a lot of things that we've been taught will sink in and we'll begin to believe that that's true. So my platform, Kishore, is to get us to go back and look at the fundamentals. Remember, what we're trying to do in the first place is to run an enterprise and get the best out of each individual. that does require something I'm calling management, which is that one-on-one, day-to-day, face-to-face process. Uh, I prefer to call people managers versus bosses, managers versus supervisors, managers versus division managers or whatever. It's a simple way of thinking about how to run an enterprise in such a way that you get the outcomes that you're looking for. Remember, I said it's a discipline. So one of my friends, Marshall Goldsmith, says, I never debate with people their definitions. I'm just offering you my definitions. And my definition says that when you're working with people to get the best out of them, that is something simply we call management. I know this is a very unsatisfying answer to you, but that's kind of after 40 years of looking at this is where I've landed.
Yeah, fair enough, James. I think, it's the balance between managing and leading. Yeah, it's both. It cannot be managing people cannot be 100% thing. Yeah, agree.
If
Thank
you
you.
follow me on LinkedIn, I've have a whole series of distinctions between leadership and management. And the point that you just made is right on target. Leaders can point the way, but managers help you get to the way.
Yeah,
Leaders can say, here's what we must do, but managers are the ones that help you do it. So we have to make sure that we have a balance between the two. That's why I say I'm not trying to swing the pendulum back to a singular focus on management. I want us to seek balance at the pendulum right in the middle so we have great leadership along with great management. Those are the things that create successful enterprises.
yeah, fair enough. Thank you
And
so much.
Okay, thank you, Kishore.
thank you.
Thank you, James. Next question is from Nirbhay. He asks, so with all possible mechanism, is it possible that a manager can keep 100% of its employees happy?
Uh, Thank you for asking that. This is one of my favorite points. In my book, it's called Getting 100% from 100% of your people 100% of the time. And every time I present that idea, people say, that is impossible. You can never get 100% from 100% of your people 100% of the time. And my answer is, of course you can. All you have to do is allow them to do what they really want to do. Now, how many of you all get up in the morning and go to work and say, wow, I can't wait to get in there to give 20%? No, we really want to give. We want to give 100%. It is our desire to show off, to show you how good I am, to show you what I can do for the enterprise. The problem we have is that something gets in the way of people performing at 100%. And 80% of the time, that something is a poor manager. So the answer is yes, you can. If you develop the management skills that allow everybody to be at their best all the time, you can get the best out of everybody all the time. And for one reason, because they want to give it. They want to give it. People are naturally motivated as just being a human being. I'm good at something. I want you to see how good I am. I want to show off. I want you to recognize me for what I'm good at. And only thing that gets in the way of me doing that is a poor manager. So that's how I would respond to that. It is doable, and as a matter of fact, it's more natural than what we're getting now.
Okay, so Nirbhay, I hope your question is answered. You can let me know in chat while I will move to the next point. This is more of input. While experience within an organization can be valuable, a manager should build trust based on performance, integrity, and alignment with team goals rather than tenure alone. So this is from Charan Preet. He just shared his thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, so Nirbhay is also happy with your answer. Now let's move on to the next question. So next question is from Vineet. He says, how should manager handle team members who resist learning new technology despite being given opportunities to grow? And I think a similar question comes from Devendra also. He says, how should a leader perform when there are several team members with negative attitudes? So one he says specifically not ready to learn, and other is with already preconceived negative thoughts.
Okay. Now we're in the sweet spot. People don't come naturally to work with a negative attitude. So where do they get it from? They get it from a work environment that's not working for them. Now, who has the capacity to improve that? The manager. Their manager has the job of creating a work environment that is great for them. And to your first question, here's the thing. Not everybody is cut out to do everything. I didn't go through this, but there are four phases to the employee manager relationship. I told you, the 3, 4, 7, 12, 28. There are four phases, and that is bringing them in, helping them win, helping them grow, and then letting them go. The first thing that happens is a manager has to identify the right talent. And if you identify the wrong person and give them an assignment that they just are not cut out for, that is on you, the manager. You chose poorly. Don't put that on the person who doesn't know how to do it and has no interest in knowing how to do it. That is on you for choosing poorly to bring someone into a position where you knew what's required of them, and you knew that they're not the kind of person who wants to do that or will do that. So the manager has to take responsibility for identifying and hiring the right people, for nurturing their natural talents and gifts, for helping them to grow. And then at some point in time, when you find out there's a mismatch, guess what you have to do? You have to help them move along. You have to let them go. You have to be part of the catalyst that says, hey, doesn't seem to be a good match for you. Let me and you look out and see if there's something better in the enterprise that you can do better, that better fits your skills and your talents and will allow you to do your best work. And so let's find that, because this is not it. And it's your job as the manager to take the lead on even that decision of letting them go. So we can't sit around and complain about, this person is not doing a really good job, and what am I going to do about it? Well, what you're going to do is look in the mirror and say, wow, I did a bad job. I did not choose well. This person is never going to be a great systems analyst. They're never going to be a great information technologist. And so I should have thought about that before I brought them on. So that's on me. That's on me. And once you do that a couple of times, you will be more deliberate about following those four phases, bringing them in, be deliberate about who you bring in, helping them win, confirming that they have the potential and the talent that you think they have, helping them grow, giving them the opportunity that we talked about earlier to do their best work and to show off into the organization. But then at some point in time, for a variety of reasons, either they're not fitting in or they have gotten so good that you no longer can offer them what they need, you have to let them go.
Thanks, James. I hope Devendra and whose question was it? And Vineet, your question is answered. If there is something, any follow-up question, you can let me know, please, in the chat. Okay, Vineet says thanks. He's happy with your answer. I think we have the last question in the window, which is from Prasad Patil. He asks, how do enterprises give adequate focus to both effectiveness and efficiency, as both are equally important when it comes to enhancing productivity and performance?
Okay. My ear, I'm a Southern US guy, so my ear has to be attuned. Would you repeat that one more time? I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
there's a key question in there.
yeah. How do enterprises give adequate focus to both effectiveness and efficiency, as both are equally important when it comes to enhancing productivity and performance?
Yeah. So efficiency, effectively, the balance between those two is an age-old problem. Efficiency, of course, defining our terms, is how much we can get done with how little. And effectiveness is, do we get the outcomes that we want? We never want to give up effectiveness in favor of efficiency. Peter Drucker said something, and you should write this down. He says, there's nothing more useless than doing something really well that shouldn't be done at all.
Mm.
So unfortunately, those of us in the tech space, we have a tendency to do things not because they're needed, not because they're valuable, but because we can.
Mhm.
I'm an engineer by training, which is I know that I have this tendency to do. I'll look at a problem and I could come up with a very elegant solution to that problem, and I want to do it. I never bother to ask the question, well, who needs this? Who wants this? How valuable is it? How will it help anybody? So we do it because we can rather than answering those questions. What, now what, what, uh, so what? So I would say the balance is always in favor of effectiveness. The bottom line is you want to get done what you need to get done. It's got to be effective. Efficiency, I love the fact that we are now in an age of augmented, we call it intelligence. I know it's not intelligence, but augmented intelligence, we call AI. We're able to do a lot more things than we could in the past. There's an old adage that says in business, you can have it cheap, fast, or good, but you can only choose two of those. You can't have all three. Well, I would say in the era of augmented intelligence, we're getting close to the point where you can have them all free. AI doesn't cost anything. I mean, it's almost free. We're looking for the killer app so we can actually find out what it's useful for. And by the way, we haven't found it yet. Can you think about all the hype that's going on around artificial intelligence that they call? And so far, all we've been able to do is to say, "Hey, it can complete my sentences. It'll correct my the thesis that I just wrote, or it'll write an article for me." I mean, that's nice, but we're still looking for how can we use it at a massive scale to do things that we humans don't need to be doing. Remember, that's the purpose of technology, is to step in and say we human beings have such capacity, and yet we are tied down doing stuff that is repetitive, rote, it doesn't require thinking, doesn't require imagination. We're just doing them because they do need to be done. So the history of technology has always been use technology to free humans up to do what we uniquely can do. And we have not yet found the killer app for the modern AI, and we're still looking for it. But effectiveness is always the objective. Let's make sure we get the job done. And if we can do it efficiently, the benefit of that is we make more money. Efficiency reduces cost.
Yeah, great response. Prasad, I hope your question is answered. Your, if you have any follow-up questions, yeah. So Prasad says, noted, thanks for elaborate explanation. And it was insightful. Thank you, Prasad. Anybody else having any question? Yeah. I think everybody has got a lot of insights from those questions itself. And it has been, Suresh says, super response, absolutely bang on. And I believe you can type in your feedback about the session also so that James can be sure that he has delivered a great lecture. So, Dr. James, as always, as expected, the session has been really great. And it, I think it would have cleared fog for many of the people who have attended this particular session today. And I think there have been great questions and even greater answers. And there is a lot of
Good.
distinction. I think clarity would have come from what is called management and leadership. The point is, with so many definitions of leadership, we ourselves are confused what is leadership and what is management. But thank you
Yeah.
for helping us out through this little thing, which is having great impact on all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vernon. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. Before we go, I'm going to put my final slide up one last time
yeah,
because I want to make sure that if anybody's interested, that you can, let's see, that you can contact me at james@jamesorogers.com. And when you do, ask for a copy of my white paper called Managing by the Numbers. I just showed you the essence of managing by the numbers, but if you want to see the whole story, And also continue to follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm constantly talking about this topic. So thank you so much for the privilege.
Right. Thank you so much. We are honored to have you as part of this speaker series. Thank you so much. Okay, team, thank you very much for joining us today. We are winding up the session. Thank you, James.
Thank you. See you later.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.